really full, but we want to just run through some of these things quickly so we can get to the live demonstration. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the background, what this tool is intended to do, what we feel the benefits are, what is encompassed in the tool, the QMAP tool, how we are pulling together a pilot of the tool, and then what it takes to participate in the pilot, as well as what the tool itself looks like. So let's just move ahead here. Some simple questions to talk a little bit about. The reason for the development of the QMAP tool, it was really an outgrowth of a whole new initiative at Mentoring Partnership around quality, which is not to say that we haven't been paying attention to quality for a long time, but we have followed the trends in research in the field, the interests of funders in the field, the concerns of other stakeholders, and I think we have all, who have been in the mentoring field for a little while, seen a shift from an interest in quantity to an interest in quality. The interest in quantity being the thought that if you just get more mentors and get more mentors involved with more kids, it will have good outcomes. And I think what we know through the generations of research that have come in the last probably 10 to 15 years is that it takes a number of different things to actually achieve positive outcomes, and quantity may be the least of it. But when we talk about mentoring, we're talking about the kinds of things that make for strong relationships, long-lasting relationships, so that we can increase the dosage of those positive relationships between mentors and their youth that they mentor. And so what we are looking at from the perspective of a mentoring partnership, a technical assistance and support organization like ours, is how do we best support programs to create quality experiences for the young people, quality experiences for the mentors, and then quality experiences that young people will take with them throughout their lives. And I know we spent a lot of time over the last year talking about the research that supports that. I'm not going to reiterate that because I know many of you that are part of this webinar are very familiar with that. But this is just the impetus for us and where this interest in developing a tool like QMAP comes from. We've heard from funders in our state that they're interested in having something to help them sort out what organizations should get more resources, more support, because they are doing the right things right, which is not to say that we are interested in creating a way to filter people out, but we really want to strengthen all programs as much as possible, and we want to give guidance to both stakeholders, funders, and community members about which programs are going to help produce positive outcomes in young people, and we think that this is a starting point for that. I want to point out that this is work that we've been doing since the end of 2007. So we've been at this for some time, and we're just now getting to the point that we have something publicly to roll out and share. Those of you who have been involved in processes like this will appreciate that this is a long haul, and it's not something that we can produce overnight. And when I say that we've got something to share, it means that we're just at the point that we have a solid draft of this tool, and that we are going to be doing some piloting, first with members of our advisory group who have seen this a number of different times, but also with some programs that we're recruiting in our state. We're trying to recruit a diverse mix of programs to test this tool out, tell us how it works for them, to help us create some benchmarks so we'll understand a little bit more about what the tool actually measures, how it's linked with quality. So we'll be doing some ongoing assessment with those pilot folks, as well as the pilot programs, as well as taking a look at how to revise and refine this tool. So we're really, after 2 years, at the beginning stage. And again, I think folks that have been involved in a process of developing a resource like this will understand that this is something that does take a long time. I have to say that at the Mentoring Partnership, we've probably had hoped that we'd have the whole process up and running by now, but I think we've started to learn that we have to crawl and walk before we can run. I want to talk a little bit about some of the people that have been involved in this process as well. I've talked to you about our staff, and certainly all the staff on board here have really made it a focus of all the work that we do here. The Mentoring Partnership itself has adopted a new strategic plan that has quality at the center, so our board has been involved in creating structures that support this, as well as putting the weight of our organization behind it. We have a quality advisory group who's been with us, members of whom have been with us for several months, and in some cases years, getting this this tool ready, kind of working out some of the bugs, helping us think through what our intentions are. Anything that you could expect from an advisory group, they've done, and they've really stepped up to do quite a lot. Majority of Our advisory group members, our program participants, our program, program staff, program practitioners, and you're going to see a full list of those at the end. But I want to also throw out a couple of acknowledgments right now just to have you understand what the scope of the advisory group has been. We've had our primary funder for this initiative, the Carlson Family Foundation, involved in the advisory group. David Nelson, who is a staff member and program officer at the Carlson Family Foundation, has been part of our advisory group meetings and helped provide some direction in terms of how we share information like this with the funding community, how we explain the value of a tool like this, and help the funders in our community understand how this work can strengthen mentoring programs. We've had Amy Sinekin from the Charities Review Council be an invaluable part of our group, and I want to mention Amy because the Charities Review Council in our state has created an online tool very similar to the QMAP, and we have shamelessly traded on their experience, gotten insights from them about what it takes to develop an online tool like this, and learned from I wouldn't say mistakes that they made, but maybe some roads that they've gone down that we don't need to go down. And so we've really appreciated their support, and we're also a Charities Review Council member, so we've appreciated that both as a member as well as fellow professionals. Deborah Moore and Dale Blythe from the University of Minnesota Extension Service and the University of Minnesota's Center for Youth Development and Research have been part of our group, and again provided really strong support in looking at the issues of quality in youth development. The University of Minnesota is doing a lot of work on this through the YouthWorks Institute, and they have provided great trading of resources, ideas, and cross-fertilization with those efforts. And also want to thank Deborah Matilla and Leah Goldstein-Moses of the Improve Group, our consultants on creating this tool on evaluation, because we would be nowhere without their insight and expertise. And I'm not saying that just to provide some thank yous, but also to give you folks on the other end of the webinar a sense of some of the expertise that's come to bear on developing this tool. Also want to thank Blair Gagne from Mentor Duluth, the executive director of both Mentor Duluth and also the director of the True North AmeriCorps group, who co-chairs our quality initiative, and Judith Kahn, another one of our board members who co-chairs our quality initiative, because they've provided some of the support and high-level discussions around how this is going to be part of our organization's mission going forward. I'm going to just kick it over to April for a minute to see if there's anything else that you'd want to say. April, I'm unmuting you to say that if there's anything that you would add about the development of the QMAP that you think people need to know.
I think we should keep moving and get into seeing where we're at, and if there are more questions about where it's coming from. I mean, it's really, like we said, it's something that programs and funders wanted, and we're not making it up out of the blue. So it's definitely something that people were looking for how do we take our program to the next level. So I think we should dig in and take a peek.
Okay. What I also want to mention is that this is created as a self-assessment tool. This is a tool that programs will dig into, hopefully involve many members of their staff in completing the tool, so you get a number of different perspectives within the organization. But it's also really grounded in the elements of effective practice, which is, of course, comes to us from the National Mentoring Partnership and from Mentor. And I'm imagining, just from the names I'm seeing on our attendee list, that most of you are familiar with the elements of effective practice. And if you participated in our last webinar, you know that we have a new version of the elements of effective practice that came out in October, which really provided a greater focus on evidence-based practice research in the area of program operations, which you'll see further in the QMAP. Our staff had an opportunity to participate in the development and review of the elements of the third edition of the Elements of Effective Practice. April was also a member of the Summer Youth Institute on Mentoring, which took a really close and critical look at the elements of effective practice. So we've had the benefit of seeing the elements third edition as it was in process, in development, and incorporated that as we went on into the QMAP. So you see the information about the QMAP on your screen, and again, the elements of effective practice is it's something that's not new, not only to folks in the webinar, but to our organization. Our Training Institute, which April is the primary manager of, really uses the elements of effective practice as the basis for the training and capacity building that we do with mentoring programs. And again, I'm going to turn you on for just a moment, April, to talk a little bit about our upcoming training on elements of effective practice.
Okay, I'm so rough right now, coming back from maternity leave. I wasn't ready for that. We do an Elements of Effective Practice training in a 2-day format, and there's a workshop coming up in February on the 21st and 22nd here in Minneapolis. But the way we use the Elements of Effective Practice is we're really looking at, and I think with the QMAP too, is that they're not the only piece, it's the foundation of that, and that we're really looking at through the QMAP process, which the name of which came from that whole group, and it was the last thing we did, was name the tool. But really looking at what is the evidence and providing a tool that allows programs who participate and who would do the self-assessment to provide us and provide the field with information about what's working and what best practices might be. So I think it's important to note that it's a two-way process, and it's not necessarily handing down you know, expectations to programs, but that we're hoping to learn from them as well.
Great. Thanks, April. That was an important point. And the other thing that I wanted to say about the relationship of the elements of effective practice to what you would see in the QMAP is you'll see something that's far different, and that's because our advisory group spent a lot of time chewing through what we know about effective practice and really interfacing that with elements of effective practice and trying to put our best practitioner wisdom behind that, as well as using the current research. And so we started with elements of effective practice, I think, as many other state mentoring partnerships had done in creating assessments, but we also have taken a hard look at what makes sense and what does this mean on a day-to-day practice level for programs in the field. Some of the things that we think folks will get out of participating in the using a tool like the QMAP, and this is not just not necessarily just about QMAP, but for any self-assessment and any process that people go through with review of program practices, is that first of all, just providing, having the chance to reflect on program practices and how they're implemented day to day creates more attention to the detail of running a program, creates more attention to improvements that might be needed in the program, and creates more attention to quality. So we know that these are some of the benefits of just participating in a process like this. Our hope and our plan is that folks that use the QMAP process will also go through an assessment with mentoring partnership staff on the feedback that comes out of the completed assessment. And we're going to provide some feedback on what we see in program operations, make suggestions for resources that might be utilized, help people make some decisions about things that they might want to do to improve their programs on a day-to-day basis or to improve program practices. And supporting that, we'll be providing tools, strategies, consultation to help people utilize those best practices. And so we see the QMAP, again, as just a starting point in a whole process. But we've been talking about this long enough. We need to talk a little bit about what we actually have here. The 4 sections that we have in the QMAP are things that people will recognize if you're familiar with elements of effective practice: program management, program operations, program evaluation, and then the uploads section is the culmination of completing the QMAP, in which you'll be able to upload documents that demonstrate what you've done as program practitioner. What you don't see, if you're familiar with elements of effective practice, is a program design development section. We had made the decision that the information that typically comes out of program design is something that we're capturing in a program registration, so it's a precursor to doing the QMAP and indeed to getting some of the other things that our organization is now providing with the new website. The program design questions are asked of just about every program that we come into contact with now. We're in the process of shifting that over through a program registration process. So it enables us through the QMAP assessment to focus on what's really happening in program management, operations, and evaluation. I'm going to unmute April because it looks like she may have a question. Is that the case, April? Okay. just to talk a little bit about the different sections, program management, as we know, includes the tasks and responsibilities associated with managing a program, setting up a program such as a leadership structure, hiring staff, managing finances, accountability, marketing, advocacy. And what we're going to do when we jump into the demonstration is give you an example of how we ask about some of those things. That you'll find that those questions are fairly, I wouldn't say too detailed, but they get past that initial level of what's your leadership structure to asking people a little bit about how that leadership structure is utilized, for example. We also are going to spend time with the QMAP, and this is probably the section I think that has the most items, program operations, which again, the day-to-day operations of a mentoring program that we're all familiar with, recruiting, screening, training, matching, ongoing support and recognition, supervision, and closure. And this is the section that really has benefited most from the new iteration of the elements of effective practice. All the pieces that have been examined through evidence-based research and research on evidence-based practice have been incorporated into that, and we've tried to, as closely as possible, word the items that we have in this section to correlate with the new edition of the elements of effective practice. Okay, I am moving on to the next one. April, if you have a question, just jump in. April's indicating that she might want to have something to say here. Program evaluation is another section that we cover in the QMAP, and I think as many of you may have experienced in looking at the elements of effective practice, it's the area of the elements that I think has fewer resources but potentially has the biggest impact on a program. And so we were very lucky with our program evaluators, our evaluators who worked with us on this project, to get a lot of input from them to help us break down how programs may do evaluation using steps like a logic model, and then trying to draw out through the questions that are asked on the QMAP the indicators that that might tell us and help programs show what they're doing around evaluation. But as you know, evaluation is really anything that you can do that tells you where your program's successful as well as how it can be improved. And the information that comes out of evaluation is valuable to a program in that it can be used in communicating with participants, funders, supporters, other stakeholders. So we really focus in this area on how are the program outcomes demonstrated as well as how the participant outcomes are demonstrated, but also not just relying on the fact that there may be evaluation occurring, but we are really encouraging programs and asking them to show us how they use findings to improve their program, how they use the findings of evaluation to, to analyze the program data that they have, how they use findings to communicate to the value of the program in the community. The upload section is at the end of each of those three main sections, and that allows you to upload documents that will demonstrate what you're doing with each of those areas that we've talked about. So examples of some of the things that you're required to upload might be a written description of your program's mission, your program's recruitment plan, your samples of data collection instruments. So it just gives us an opportunity to take a look at the program through the eyes of the documents that have been developed, through the eyes of the policies and the procedures that are in place. What we hope for through this process is that not only will we learn more about programs, but we will come up with examples of best practices that we can share among programs. And certainly we wouldn't be doing that without the permission of programs that are participating in this process, but we are taking a look at what are the things that we can do to demonstrate to the rest of the field that there are some best practices at work and help us all learn from each other. We're conducting pilots, as were mentioned in the past.
Hello?
Yes, April, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Emerald, this is another place where I think it's important to note that we're looking at, for the uploads, that we're looking at different types of evidence for how you can show that you're meeting a standard, and that it's not just about saying there's one way or one process for doing something. That by allowing the upload, it helps programs be able to show us, well, this is how we're doing this, and we can look at those different types of evidence, and particularly in this pilot phase, which Paul is going to talk about next.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that's a great segue into talking a little bit about the pilot. Just in terms of what we're doing with the pilot, we are recruiting programs right now to participate in pilots starting in February 2010 that not only will go through the self-assessment process, but that we'll be working with closely so we can help. They can help us understand the experience that users have with the assessment. We can provide resources to people as they're going through if they have questions, if things aren't clear, or if they, there may be something that they're asked to provide, for instance, a staff development plan. They've never had one in their organization. We don't want that to stop people. We want to provide resources right there and then to help people think about how can we, in the future, institute a plan like this, or how can we start to create a plan and include that in our assessment process. So this pilot process for us is very necessary to just understand not only the user experience, but what people might do with the information going forward. We don't want this to be an assessment that people do that sits on a shelf. So we're trying to make it as much as possible a living, breathing entity, and we know that that's going to require support from us, assistance, while people are doing the assessment itself, but also afterwards as we review the program submissions and talk those submissions and the results through with program staff. And that's, again, why we were lucky enough to have Shannon and Mindy come to us to increase our capacity as an organization to do that. We're inviting folks to be part of the pilots. We're going to get to a little bit later to the criteria for being part of the pilot. But before I do that, I want to jump forward and talk a little bit about what QMAP actually looks like, since we've been describing it all this time, so we're going to go live. And what I'm going to do now is switch over to Shannon, because Shannon is going to give us a taste of what it is that the QMAP looks like. And so she's going to jump in here and take control. What you see on your screen is the first page of the tool itself. And again, I don't know if I've emphasized this enough, but this is an online tool. It is something that you find on our website. Access to that is controlled right now because we don't have anyone using it, but it will be something that only mentoring partnership approved programs can use. Approved meaning at this point that we want you to be part of the pilot, and in the future we're going to have other criteria in place for this. We want to make sure that people understand that as we collect information, we are respecting the privacy of the information you provide, privacy of documents you provide. So you'll see a little bit of fairly, I think, detailed description about this, and I'm not going to go into that, but I just want, for folks that are interested in thinking about being part of the pilot, the only people that will really have access to the information about your program will be mentoring partnership staff who will be doing the review of the e-assessments, and also the evaluators we work with strictly on this project, so it's going to stay in-house until such time as we might want to ask a program, for instance, to share a best practice that they have. So if you would scroll down to the bottom of the page, Shannon, I'm going to just highlight one thing. One of the things that we have discussed is we've talked about the types of programs that we want to have throughout this whole process, is that we understand that there are different operational standards for programs that might be a standalone mentoring program, meaning that all your organization does is mentoring. You're maybe an independent nonprofit or 501c3. But we also know that there are many, many mentoring programs that are embedded into larger organizations. So at this point, we're using non-standalone program. We call these embedded programs. We're still looking for the right terminology of this, but that might be an organization that's a mentoring program within a school, within a community center, within a business. And so we understand, especially with questions that have to do with the operations of, program leadership, budgeting, things like that. Those things look really different from between standalone and non-standalone programs. You'll see that the buttons on the bottom allow people throughout as they go throughout this assessment to save their work and come back to it. This is fairly lengthy and fairly detailed. We know that it's going to take folks a while to get through it, and so we understand that it's going to be something that you might do in small chunks. I want you to scroll up to the top of the page, Shannon, and tell us, it's going to take a minute, show us just how you navigate through the QMAP. We were at the introductory section. Then there's 3 sections, as we've talked about: program management, program operations, program evaluations. And so those are the main areas in which we're asking people to complete assessments. And what I'm going to do, I don't want to go through the many items in each section, but I want to give you sort of an outline of what one item might be. So can you scroll to the top of that page, please? Okay, yep. Okay, it takes me a minute for Shannon and I to catch up between our 2 computers. So, for instance, what you see in this program management section, the first of 3 sections, is that we have a section A, which is that broad designation of designing a mentoring program. We said that we didn't incorporate too much of the design and development, but we did include this in program management as a necessary first step. And then that first item is write a mission statement for the program. We want to know if programs have written their mission statement. For every single item on this on the QMAP and each section, you have 3 options with taking a look at each item. You can tell us that this activity is not relevant to your program or organization. You can tell us that we're still planning or we've made steps towards completing it, but we haven't completed it or put it into regular practice. Or you can say this is completed or it's in regular practice. It's only that third button that's going to generate another whole way to respond, and that's what you see below. And that is that we ask you to rate your actual implementation of that item, since you've told us it's in regular practice. So the way that items are rated are that and this is where we've gotten a lot of feedback from our evaluator, but we're looking for a lot of feedback from folks as they use the tool. The first rating on this 1 to 5 scale is that this particular task is performed without intentionality or awareness of best practices. Maybe it's just sort of assumed to be done. There's no documentation. It might be something that has created some negative perceptions of the program, reduces effective use of the program resources. It's something that may be impacting negatively on the program or may have no impact on the program because it's not something that's that has been a focus of attention. So that would be the lowest rating. I'm going to skip to rating number 3, and that's where people might rate that particular practice as being performed with some awareness or use of best practices, that maybe documentation has been done, it hasn't been done consistently, maybe there's some staff that are aware, some that aren't. You can get a sense of what we're asking people to rate themselves at in that level. And then the 5th rating, at number 5, skipping down there, is would be the highest rating, that particular task is formed with intentionality, utilizing best practices, it's clearly articulated, documented, shared broadly, it promotes an outstanding reputation for the agency. Obviously, this is something that really enhances the performance and the reputation of the agency, enhances the experience of the participants, something that really contributes towards this program being recognized as a high-quality mentoring program. And we also included ratings number 2 and 4 as being the in-betweens, where people are maybe making progress from moving from 1 to 3, or between, would not rate themselves as performing at the highest level possible, but know that they are actually making progress or working towards performing on the highest level. The other section, or the other item I want to highlight, is that box below, which gives you the option of describing what actions you're taking to actually improve the activity, complete the activity. This might be, it could be utilized with any of the initial 3 options. It might be a place for people to tell us why the activity isn't relevant. It might be a place to say, it's not something we've started on yet, but we have a plan, and our plan is that, in 6 months we're going to have staff training to get everybody on board with writing mission statements. The other thing that that sometimes we think this is probably going to be most utilized with is when folks want to explain why they rated themselves at a particular level, or maybe provide some evidence or ask a question. So that's what that box is for, and that's where we think we're going to get a lot of rich detail from people. But also, as you think about the process of completing an assessment like that, that's where it's going to necessitate some time and attention and some really some dedicated time to go through this process. Shannon, if you would, I want to just highlight the help buttons and the resource buttons on the side, and this is something that shows up throughout the throughout any of the QMAP, any section, any item. You will always see floating on the side a resources button, and that clicking on that will provide you with access to resources that are relevant to that particular section. And this is something that Chen has spent a lot of time on, accumulating and tracking and logging different resources. And so we were linking to things that might be in the Elements of Effective Practice Toolkit. It might be something, and you'll see all the references here, it might be something that National Mentoring Center has put together. So we've really tried to look broadly across the field and then provide links and access to resources that will help people either complete that section, understand that section better, or if this is something that they'd like to improve or change in their program to give them the place to go to get what they need, in addition to any of the technical assistance and support that we provide. And flip back into that QMAP item and just explain a little bit about the help button too, and see what that pulls up. The help button, again, this is where you can find access to the technical assistance that we have in place to support people during their assessment. You can directly connect with April, our Director of Training and Community Partnerships, either through through her email or giving her a call, or Shannon. Again, Shannon's role being to be the technical assistance and training specialist with this project. And so she's probably going to be the first call for a lot of people, we hope. She's going to be responsible for following up with people as they're in the process of doing the assessment, to see if there's any help that they need, just to see how things are going, maybe to share some experiences that she's talked to other people about. So you might want to know how somebody else in a school-based mentoring program, for instance, is filling out a particular question. She's going to be the person that has the most up-to-date information on the process. So that's our demonstration of what the actual layout of the QMAP is. I want to flip to, let's go to the next section. Let's go to program operations, and Shannon, just randomly pick an item for us, and we can see again what types of items are looked for. Maybe if you scroll down a few pages into that, into the program operations section. For instance, screening. What you see are a number of different items that are related to the screening process. And for those of us who've been in the field for a while, we know that in order to do strong screening, there's a number of different steps that are followed. And so rather than, as with some of the other assessments that we've seen, just talk about screening as a one-item, yes, we do screening, a one-item task. We've really broken it down, and this is where the feedback from our advisory group has been so helpful, as well as taking a look at the latest edition of the Elements of Effective Practice. So we've really tried to take a language and follow the format of the new Elements of Effective Practice edition, but also really use the practitioner wisdom that we've brought in and been so blessed to have as part of this process. So we've talked about things, everything from criminal background checks to references to whether people do home visits to their mentors, if they're going to be involving mentors outside of a site-based program. So you can see the level of detail just in this one particular item. I want to flip ahead to the evaluation section, and just to get a sense of what an item might be there. And I think Shannon, it takes a minute to get it up on the screen. There we go. And again, this is just one example of of an item under the evaluation section, determining, for instance, what elements of program progress to measure, and then laying that out in a step-by-step basis. And I really have to thank Deborah Matilla from Improve Group for helping us with that and helping us understand that. The items that we have in each section are organized by letter, so we can easily track back between the resources that are associated with them. It may be a little confusing at first, but one of the things, if you're interested in just seeing an overview of this, is to get in touch with us and get a one-page summary that we have that highlights the different headers in each section. And I will tell you, I've been saving this news for last because I'm still amazed by it myself, but in the program management section we have 41 items, and those are organized under about 8 different headers. In the program operations section we have 43 items, and those are organized under about a dozen headers. And then in the program evaluation section we have 15 items, and those are also organized in probably about 3 to 4 headers, but with a number of detailed items underneath. And so if you want to get that overview, that step back from about 1,000 feet or so, then one of the things that you can do is just have us send that out to you, or we can make it available. It should be available on the website at this point, but I don't think it is. Okay, we'll make sure that that link is out there. So that's the QMAP. I'm going to run through a couple other things about it. Oh, excuse me, Shannon reminded me we're going to do one more thing, and that was to talk about the upload section. So we'll go to that. I'm not seeing that on my screen, so let's see. Okay, let me just go back here. I think we may have had a shift in the screen, so I'll just describe the upload section, which really basically provides a way for programs to upload Word documents, PDF documents, anything that will demonstrate what they're doing in the process of providing information about how they put program practices into real-life practice. And so the kinds of things that that we will be asking for might be anything from program recruitment plan, as was mentioned, staffing, organizational chart to show us your organization, mission statement, things like that. And so I'm going to ask Shannon to give me back control of the screen so we can go through the rest of the webinar and give you a chance to ask some questions too. I think that should do it. Okay. There we go. So, as we said, we've seen the live demonstration of the QMAP, and I want to just briefly review the criteria for folks that will be eligible to participate in our initial pilots, which are to help us benchmark program practices and take a look at what is typical practice for programs. The criteria for participating in the programs, participating in the pilot are, first of all, that you need to be a Minnesota program. We're asking that programs be in operation for at least 2 years and be actively working with at least 20 matches, and that programs be a youth to adult mentoring program. Those are the parameters that we've set so that we can make sure that programs have some experience under their belt, they've worked with enough matches that they can tell us what their typical practices are. These are fairly, I think it's probably a fairly low threshold, but we wanted to at least start with programs that we know we have some experience in place. We're limiting program participation in the pilot to Minnesota programs and youth to adult mentoring programs because that is the focus of our organization. We've had inquiries in the past about people that do adult to adult programs. We don't feel that our resources or this tool adequately addresses some of the things that adult to adult programs experience. We are trying to look at peer mentoring programs as well, but we're starting out with what we know and what the research is out there that backs this up, which is the adult to youth programs. I have to say that we are very interested in having a diversity of programs in the pilots. We are particularly looking at different models like group mentoring, even e-mentoring. We don't know what that's going to look like as people go through the assessment, so we're very interested in seeing how those programs compare to each other, and we're not setting this up as a comparison between which model is best, but a way to better understand different program models. The benefits of participating in the pilot are, we think, many and varied. We talked a little bit about more the intrinsic or internal benefits, but I'm going to have Mindy talk a little bit about the benefits of participating as it may be from the external side, what you might get out of participating in this pilot, if you're a program that is potentially thinking about that. So Mindy, you're unmuted. Go ahead. I'm going to just tell me when you want me to flip the screen to the next one. Can you hear Mindy?
Polly, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Mindy.
All right. If you could go ahead and go to the next slide for me.
Yep.
Obviously, programs are going to be receiving recognition from their peers for leading this quality movement, rather. So that's big. And you're also going to be receiving individual training, technical assistance, and personalized assessment. And you'll be able to use those results in funding applications. Show your funders that, hey, you're taking on quality as an initiative for your organization, you recognize its importance, and you're in that first group. If you're participating in the pilot, you're one of the first people on the bandwagon. If you want to go ahead and go to the next screen for me, Polly, or Shannon.
It's me.
Okay. Can't see you guys back there. All right, so you're also obviously, and probably more importantly, you're going to be helping families and volunteers feel confident that they are participating in quality mentoring programming, and in doing so you'll be protecting the youth and making sure that they're getting the most out of the experience as well. So it is a time-consuming assessment, but it is very valuable in terms of the benefits that you're going to see come out of it.
Thanks a lot, Mindy. I appreciate your jumping in to give a little bit of a commercial, but also I think a true reflection of what we think the benefits are going to be. And again, going back to our advisory committee, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have some broader stakeholders in that group to tell us whether we were on the right track. And particularly with our funder from the Carlson Family Foundation and conversations he's had with other funders, we really understand this to be something that funders are particularly interested in. And I think even the work that Mayan's done around public policy in our organization, we see more policymakers, decision makers being interested in program quality, and introducing them to it through this kind of a tool allows us to really demonstrate the best of what mentoring does for young people and the best of what mentoring programs do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that young people have quality experiences, positive outcomes in the programs and relationships they participate in. I'm going to just run through a quick summary of what we think are going to be some frequently asked questions, and I have to say that is without having those questions been asked yet, some of the things that we think people may want to know from the outset. And again, not to just shift this focus to people that might participate in the pilot, but for anyone from other state organizations, as I know you're participating, just to think about sort of the broader parameters and context of doing this work. And if you have any insight for us on work that would pertain to this from work you've done, we'd love to hear it. But we think it's going to take about 6 weeks to complete the assessment. We're basing this particularly on the experience that we've heard about from the Mass Mentoring Partnership in Massachusetts, that you know, they've had folks that have taken several months. We're hoping that we can provide some directed technical assistance to close that loop a little bit. We think that having an online process might speed some things up a little bit, but we're going to be learning about this ourselves. We hope that within an organization there are more than one person involved in doing the assessment, completing the assessment. We want to make sure that the person that has the most knowledge about program practices, policy, history is at the center of this assessment, and we know that for many programs all that is held within one person. But we also know that there are larger programs that might involve staff at different levels, that might involve board members, that might involve even participants in answering certain questions. I'm wondering if there's a question here. April's kind of taking a look at some of the questions that we have. April, you're unmuted, so if you see a question, you can just chime in with it, or Lindsay can go ahead and let me know what that is. Okay, Lindsay says no questions. Another couple questions that we think are going to come up. Basically, we know that people want to know what they need to get started. We feel like people are going to need a fairly high-speed internet connection, just because some of the downloads, the ability to download the information from the resources may take a little time. We also know that to upload documents, that may also pose problems for people that have very slow speed or maybe dial-up computers, so that's just a caveat. We're trying to address some of those issues by looking for some assistance from our corporate community and helping people get access to the resources that they need, but that's just sort of a caveat for people thinking about going ahead with this. We also think it's really going to be helpful for having like a program manual or just operational instructions in front of you, because it may certainly, we can ask people to cut and paste, but just having it in front of you will probably save running around to gather documents. And most of all, we think it's going to take some time. As we addressed before, the only people that will see the assessment, the program quality assessment, will be mentoring partnership staff and then our evaluation consultants that are working with us directly on this project. So it stays internal to our organization until we share it with the organization that completed the assessment. So it's going to be a pretty tight loop here. And then receiving help with the tool. We want to make sure that people have everything they need every step of the way to get this done, to feel like they've been provided with resources and support as questions come up, and that's why we have, as I mentioned, both Shannon and Mindy on board with this. We also want to make sure that you have access to all of our staff, and so you'll see those contacts at the end of this webinar, but you certainly know that I hope that we're only a phone call or an email away. Quickly, I'm going to just turn this back to Mindy for a moment to explain the first step for anybody that's interested in completing the QMAP, and that's that we are asking people to register with us, register on our website as a program. As I said, we are asking for program information or program registration to accumulate program information, things like, where's your program located, what kind of a program model do you use, and Mindy can talk a little bit more about some of that. So go ahead, Mindy.
Great. All right, thanks, Polly. First of all, I should mention the registration itself is only going to take about 5 minutes max, because it's those basic kind of questions that Polly was just referencing. And it is also going to get you, in addition to eventual access in the QMAP, funding announcements, inclusion in the referral system, which, by the way, is big right now since it's National Mentoring Month. But all you have to do to start that process is go to our website, which is mpmn.org. Go to the Program Login tab over on the far right. And if you have assigned login information, you'll just log in and then click Update Profile. If you've not been assigned login information, you'll click on the program registration form. If you have any questions, just email me. And like Polly said, my contact will be at the end of the webinar.
Great. Thank you. And then for programs, once they fill out that registration, and that's what we're also asking all of the programs that we work with in Minnesota to do in order to just get listed on our new website. We're updating all of our program listings. We have a Google Maps search function now that we're very excited about. And so this is going to be the doorway to a lot of the services that we try to provide to programs, whether it's participating in getting our prevalence of mentoring survey that we want everyone to participate in, using the QMAP, or potentially getting referrals through the referral system that Mindy mentioned. But in this case, if you're interested in participating in the QMAP process and you have registered, then the next step would be to make a contact with me, as my email is indicated on the screen, and that's to let me know if you're interested. I have several people on the webinar who have indicated that interest, and so you're all kind of on our first list for people to participate once we get to the actual pilot. And then my role in this is just to review and make sure people meet the criteria, and then make sure that we have a good array of programs in the pilot process. We're really at this point interested in recruiting broadly, but we do want to make sure that programs meet the criteria that were mentioned before, and that we have a diversity of programs, because we don't want to start doing a benchmarking process with just one-to-one programs. We want to make sure we have some site-based programs, some community-based programs, programs with bigger budgets, smaller budgets. In our state, we're particularly interested in programs that a mix of programs between programs in the metro area, programs in greater Minnesota that have access to different resources, may have different community positions, relationships, things like that. And we're also particularly interested in having a good mix of what we call the standalone and the non-standalone programs. So that's a simple process to get approved, and then after that we'll make sure that you can access the QMAP and you're ready. We're going to be asking people to tell us when they're ready to get started, and then try to make sure that you're completing that within the 6-week time frame. I'm going to stop here to see if we have questions, comments, any feedback on what you think about this whole tool. And I'm going to ask Lindsay to watch for some hands. If you want to raise your hand, I'll unmute you, and you can just ask your question in audio. We can also see if there's any other identified folks that want to ask questions. You can certainly email us questions afterwards. You'll have all of our email addresses. I'm looking through my list of attendees, and I'm going to give a shout out to Tova, and I'm going to unmute Mindy to explain why we're giving this shout out to Tova. You're still unmuted, Mindy. Go ahead.
Well, Tova was involuntarily, I guess, volunteered to be a guinea pig. She went through a lot of our, she found a lot of our bugs for us in the initial process, and we were really able to work things out thanks to her feedback. So
yes, that's
Tova.
The Youth Service Bureau of the Lakes area in Forest Lake, and Tova, you were our guinea pig, our canary in the coal mine, so thank you. I know you had some frustrations with some of the bugs, but we appreciate the early adopters. We're looking for more of them with our pilot, and also looking to share information with other mentoring partnerships. We're not, I think at this point, ready to release this tool on the world, because we're, as I said, even after 2 years of development, we're still in the beginning stages of actually seeing how this works and what it looks like. But we are very excited about upcoming conversations that are going to take place about different mentoring partnerships and the methods they're using to help programs document program quality, in some cases to take a look at whether programs might want to use a national model for this. We are hopeful that some of the discussions we have will feature the work that we've done, but also feeling like we have a lot to learn from other organizations as well. So we're really looking forward to those conversations, some of which have already started taking place over the phone or through conference calls, and will take place in person in the springtime. I'm going to put out one last call for questions, And and Tova gave us a thanks for the shout out, so we appreciate you. We appreciate your getting back to us on that, Tova. But again, any questions that you might have right now, anything that you'd like to know about the process, feel free to either email any of us, and I'm going to move along to our next few slides that give you the contact information and a little bit more about our staff roles.
Can I just, if you, for those of you who are participating, if they're, because we'll probably do these webinars again, and this is the first time sort of showing it. If you have ideas of things that you'd like to see more of, or, more sample questions or things like that, a little guidance there would be more than welcome as well.
Yeah, this is really an introduction, and so it may be that we want to, in the future with some of the quality in action webinars, maybe focus on just, for instance, program management, program operations, program evaluation. This is the beginning of our year-long series. It won't just focus on this tool or the processes that we've used at Mentoring Partnership. I'm going to put a plug in here for anyone out there that feels like they have some best practices they'd like to share from their own programs or would like to discuss and kind of throw open. That we are looking for interest in future webinars. So we'll get to that at the end, but I want to also just put that plug in there because we'd love to feature actual program practitioners, how they're putting their own ideas and wisdom about quality in action in their programs. As I mentioned, I wanted to talk through just some of the contacts that you can use to get in touch with us. April was the person that was talking just before. April will be running the webinars in the future, so feel free to direct your questions, your suggestions, and comments to her. I'm certainly happy to hear those as well, but I know she's the one that's going to do the most with them. She's going to turn them into something that we can all be proud of. And the other contacts that you have in front of you on the screen, first of all, Mindy Twetton, as we've heard, is the person that will help you get your program registered, not only for participation in the QMAP, but for other NPM resources, inclusion in our referral database. And she's also the person that you may hear from in the future because she will be doing outreach to Minnesota programs that maybe haven't been an early adopter like Tova, but that might be that we think would be a good candidate for participating in the pilot. So you may be hearing from her, but you can also contact her directly. Her email and her phone number's on the screen. If you want more information on the process, on the advisory group, interested in being a participant in the pilot, you want to go ahead with that, feel free to give me a call. I'm the one that is accumulating those names and interest, and we'll be following up with all the folks that we've heard from when we have a definite start date. Again, we're targeting February 2010 because we're going to do one more internal pilot with the members of our advisory group to see if we have any bugs now that we have the completed tool up and online, so that we don't inflict these bugs on any of our external pilot, as we call them, the people that are coming to this new. Our advisory group members have sat and worked on this tool with us for the last 2 years, and so they're very close to it, but they also have a lot of great feedback to share, so we're going to start with them and make sure that we have all the bugs worked out before we unleash it on the rest of you. Other technical assistance contacts, as we've mentioned before, April, Director of Training and Community Partnerships, her email and phone number are on the screen, and Shannon Carlson, again, she's going to be the person that will be chiefly responsible for providing the technical assistance around the QMAP tool. She is intimately familiar with it. She has been a hero, I'd say, in going through and doing all of the, going through this item by item, filling it out, a dummy program registration. So we could say that she's the pioneer with this. She also was the person that was tasked with accumulating and documenting and organizing all the resources that are found within that support the QMAP, and so once you take a look at that, I think you'll really appreciate the scope of work that she's done. She got a crash course in mentoring by learning all of the resources that were out there, and she's done a great job in putting that together for people that will be using this tool. And lastly, we want to, but not leastly, we want to acknowledge all of our Quality Advisory Committee members, and you'll see on the screen the names of many, many people, the programs that they represent, the different types of mentoring wisdom that they brought to the table, and we would never have been able to do this without them because we have not been out in the fields in some cases for a little while, those of us that work here, although many of us bring that field experience to the mentoring partnership. So we really appreciate having that day-to-day experience that at the table with developing this tool, and really appreciate the time, energy, and commitment that they've brought and continue to bring to the development of this tool. Of course, the resources that you need to know about come from Mentoring Partnership. Our training and technical assistance comes through our Training Institute, and so QMAP is the newest and latest addition to the resources that we already provide. Our annual conference, which focused on quality this year, will continue to focus on quality, I would imagine, in the next year. Our website that is newly launched with our conference this year, so if you haven't seen it in a while, please take a look at the resources, some of the recruitment information that's on there, as well as just the links to other organizations and ways to get resources for your mentoring program. Our annual newsletter is something that we advise everybody to be in touch with, because that's where you get the latest news of what's going on with our organization, what's going on with QMAP. We also acknowledge and thank Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, for their leadership in creating the elements of effective practice, continuing to keep it vital, updated, relevant to the field, because we really drew a lot on the 3rd edition and have used the expertise and resources of staff from National Mentoring Partnership throughout the development of this. So thank you for your participation today. I hope that you will feel free to contact any of us if you have questions about this. If you'd like to have another demonstration, I know we kind of ran through things quickly and probably didn't get to all the information that you'd like to see, but we'll be taking a look at how to provide a little bit more detailed look at the QMAP tool for those that might want it, and a little bit more information about the development, if that's interesting to people too, where the evidence-based practice really intersected with the actual day-to-day practice and the day-to-day practitioner wisdom that we brought through our advisory group to this tool. The next webinar, a month from today, February 3rd, and you will hear from us about the kinds of things that we would like to share with you on that webinar. In the meantime, if you'd like to see this presentation, you can find it on our SlideShare account, and we didn't actually put the SlideShare account site in here, but you will receive a follow-up email that will have information about the link to the SlideShare account, and that's where you can see the PowerPoint. So feel free to share this with other folks, and feel free to give us a call if you have anything else that you would like to do. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you hanging in with us, and I hope that we'll hear from you in the future. We're done. Thanks.